A 38-year-old woman from Brooklyn betrayed her closest friend by secretly dating her 17-year-old son, manipulating the teenager through gifts and false promises. But when the forbidden relationship was exposed 2 years later, the discovery police made in a cramped apartment on Atlantic Avenue would reveal how obsession and desperation can drive someone to attempt the unthinkable, forever changing 3 lives and shocking an entire community. The friendship between Carmen Vasquez and Victoria Sterling had lasted over 15 years. They met when their children were in elementary school, bonding over school fundraisers and weekend soccer games. Carmen, a single mother working double shifts as a hospital nurse, relied on Victoria for everything from emergency childcare to late-night conversations about raising teenagers in New York City. Victoria seemed like the perfect friend. She had a successful career in real estate, owned a beautiful brownstone in Park Slope, and always appeared to have her life together. Carmen often wondered how she got so lucky to have someone like Victoria in her corner, especially during the challenging years of raising her son Marcus alone. What Carmen could never have imagined was that her trusted friend was secretly grooming her teenage son, using their close family relationship as cover for something far more disturbing. The manipulation began so subtly that even Marcus himself did not recognize what was happening until it was almost too late. The relationship that started with innocent mentoring and extra attention would eventually consume Victoria completely, leading her down a dangerous path of obsession and control. When the truth finally came to light, it would not only destroy a friendship, but nearly cost someone their life. Carmen Vasquez had been raising Marcus on her own since he was 5 years old. His father had disappeared when the responsibilities of parenthood became too overwhelming, leaving Carmen to navigate single motherhood while working long hours at Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. She took pride in providing for her son, but the demands of her job often meant relying on friends and neighbors for support. Marcus was a bright, athletic teenager who excelled in basketball and maintained good grades despite the challenges at home. At 17, he stood 6 feet tall with an easy smile and natural charisma that made him popular among his peers. However, like many teenagers from single-parent households, he sometimes craved additional adult guidance and attention. Victoria Sterling presented herself as the ideal mentor figure. At 38, she was divorced with no children of her own, focusing entirely on her successful real estate business in Brooklyn. She lived alone in a meticulously decorated brownstone worth over $1 million, complete with a home office where she conducted business meetings and entertained clients. Victoria had inserted herself into Carmen's life gradually, offering help whenever it was needed. She would pick Marcus up from school when Carmen worked late shifts, help with homework, and even attended his basketball games when Carmen could not get time off work. To the outside world, she appeared to be simply a caring family friend, stepping up to help a struggling single mother. The neighborhood where they all lived was a tight-knit community in Prospect Heights, where families looked out for each other and children played safely in the streets. Carmen felt grateful to have found such a supportive environment for raising Marcus, and Victoria's presence seemed like an additional blessing. Carmen worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital, often leaving before sunrise and returning well after dark. During these long absences, Victoria volunteered to check on Marcus, help with dinner, and ensure he completed his homework. What seemed like generous friendship was actually providing Victoria with unsupervised access to a vulnerable teenager. Marcus appreciated the attention initially. Victoria would bring expensive takeout from restaurants Carmen could not afford, help him with college application essays, and listen to his concerns about his future. She seemed genuinely interested in his thoughts and dreams, something that felt special to a teenager who often felt overlooked. Victoria was careful to maintain appropriate boundaries in front of Carmen and other adults. She never displayed any behavior that would raise suspicions, always speaking about Marcus in maternal terms, and emphasizing how proud she was of his achievements. She attended parent-teacher conferences alongside Carmen, positioned herself as a surrogate aunt figure, and gained the trust of teachers and coaches. The dynamic worked perfectly for Victoria's purposes. Carmen was grateful for the support, Marcus enjoyed the attention, and the community viewed Victoria as a selfless friend, helping a family in need. No one questioned her motives or wondered why a successful businesswoman with no children would invest so much time in someone else's teenager. The inappropriate relationship began during Marcus's senior year of high school. When he turned 18, Victoria used this milestone birthday as justification for treating him differently, claiming he was now an adult who could make his own decisions. She started inviting him to her brownstone for private dinners, telling Carmen these were college preparation sessions where they discussed his future plans. During these visits, Victoria would serve expensive wine, claiming it was educational for Marcus to learn about adult sophistication before heading to college. She convinced him that their conversations were mature discussions between equals, not the manipulative grooming sessions they actually represented. The gifts became more personal and expensive: designer clothes, electronic devices, and eventually a car. Victoria was strategic about timing these encounters when Carmen was working her longest shifts at the hospital. She knew Carmen's schedule better than Carmen did herself, having observed the patterns over months of seemingly innocent friendship. This allowed Victoria hours of uninterrupted time to deepen her psychological control over Marcus. The relationship became physical gradually, with Victoria convincing Marcus that what was happening between them was natural and special. She told him that their connection was rare and beautiful, something most people would not understand because of their age difference. She positioned herself as the experienced woman who could teach him about relationships and prepare him for adult life. Victoria used classic manipulation techniques to maintain control. She would shower Marcus with affection and expensive gifts, then withdraw suddenly when he seemed uncertain about their relationship. This created an emotional dependency where Marcus found himself seeking her approval and fearing her disappointment. She convinced him that their relationship was their special secret, something that would be ruined if other people knew about it. The financial aspect of the manipulation was particularly effective. Victoria would take Marcus to expensive restaurants, Broadway shows, and shopping trips to Manhattan stores where Carmen could never afford to shop. She made him feel sophisticated and worldly, as if he was experiencing a lifestyle he deserved but could never access without her. Marcus began lying to his mother about where he spent his time and who he was with. Victoria coached him on what to say, helping him create believable stories about studying with friends or attending school activities. The lies came easily because Victoria made him believe that protecting their relationship was protecting something beautiful and meaningful. The psychological manipulation extended to making Marcus feel responsible for Victoria's emotional well-being. She would tell him about her loneliness, her failed marriage, and how their relationship was the only thing that brought joy to her life. This placed enormous pressure on an 18-year-old who was not equipped to handle such emotional responsibility. Victoria also worked to isolate Marcus from his friends and normal teenage activities. She would schedule their time together to conflict with social events, then make him feel guilty for wanting to spend time with people his own age. She convinced him that most teenagers were immature and that he was special for preferring the company of someone who truly understood him. The relationship continued throughout Marcus's senior year and into the summer before college. Victoria even influenced his college choice, pushing him toward a local school where he could continue living at home and maintaining their relationship. She made him believe that going away to college would be abandoning someone who had invested so much in his future. As months passed, the relationship became increasingly controlling and demanding. Victoria expected Marcus to be available whenever she wanted to see him, regardless of his other commitments or responsibilities. She would become angry when he chose to spend time with friends his own age, accusing him of being ungrateful for everything she had done for him. The financial manipulation intensified as Victoria began making larger purchases for Marcus, including paying for his college tuition and buying him a car. Each gift came with strings attached and emotional obligations that made Marcus feel trapped. She would remind him constantly of her generosity and question his loyalty whenever he seemed distant or distracted. Carmen began noticing changes in her son's behavior that troubled her deeply. Marcus became secretive about his whereabouts, defensive when asked simple questions, and increasingly distant from his longtime friends. He started dressing in expensive clothes that Carmen knew she had not purchased, and he always had money for things they could not afford. When Carmen asked about these changes, Marcus would become evasive or claim that Victoria was helping him prepare for adult independence. He said she was teaching him about financial responsibility and professional networking. These explanations seemed reasonable to Carmen, who appreciated having someone mentor her son in areas where she felt less qualified. Victoria was careful to maintain her facade around Carmen, continuing to play the role of the supportive family friend. She would ask about Carmen's work, offer assistance with household tasks, and speak glowingly about Marcus's potential. However, she also began subtly undermining Carmen's authority, suggesting that she was being too protective, or that Marcus needed more freedom to develop independence. The emotional toll on Marcus became increasingly apparent to those who knew him well. His basketball coach noticed that his performance was suffering and that he seemed distracted during practices. Teachers observed that his grades were declining despite his previously strong academic record. Friends complained that he was always canceling plans and seemed different from the person they had known for years. Marcus began experiencing anxiety and depression as the weight of the secret relationship pressed down on him. He felt guilty about lying to his mother, confused about his feelings toward Victoria, and trapped by the financial dependence she had created. He wanted to end the relationship but feared losing everything Victoria had provided and facing her emotional manipulation. Victoria sensed Marcus's growing discomfort and responded by increasing her control tactics. She would threaten to withdraw her financial support for college, claim that ending their relationship would devastate her emotionally, and remind him that no one else would ever care about him the way she did. These threats kept Marcus compliant even as he became increasingly miserable. The isolation from his peer group became more pronounced as Victoria demanded more of his time and attention. She would schedule romantic dinners during times when his friends were gathering for normal teenage activities. She made him feel that choosing his friends over her was a betrayal of their special relationship. Carmen's suspicions began growing when she noticed that Marcus was spending more time at Victoria's house than seemed necessary for college preparation. She also observed that Victoria seemed to know details about Marcus's daily activities that she had not shared with her. When Carmen tried to discuss these concerns with Marcus, he would become defensive and accuse her of not trusting him. The truth came to light on a Saturday evening in October, when Carmen returned home early from a hospital shift that had been cut short due to low patient volume. She expected to find Marcus at home studying, but the apartment was empty and his car was gone. When she called his phone, he gave her a vague explanation about being at the library with friends. Something about his tone made Carmen suspicious, so she decided to drive past Victoria's brownstone to see if Marcus's car was there. Not only was his car parked outside, but through the large front windows, she could see Marcus and Victoria in what was clearly an intimate embrace. The sight was so shocking that Carmen sat in her car for several minutes, unable to process what she was witnessing. Carmen waited until Marcus came home that night, then confronted him directly about what she had seen. Initially, Marcus tried to deny everything, claiming that Carmen had misunderstood what she witnessed. However, when Carmen pressed him for details, the truth began pouring out in a stream of confessions and tears. Marcus revealed that the relationship with Victoria had been ongoing for over 6 months. He told his mother about the gifts, the manipulation, the pressure he felt to maintain the secret, and how trapped he had become. Carmen was horrified to learn that Victoria had been systematically grooming and manipulating her son while pretending to be a trusted family friend. The next morning, Carmen marched to Victoria's brownstone and confronted her directly about the relationship. Victoria initially tried to deny everything, then attempted to justify her actions by claiming that Marcus was an adult who could make his own decisions. She insisted that their relationship was consensual and meaningful, refusing to acknowledge the inherent power imbalance and manipulation involved. Carmen made it clear that the relationship needed to end immediately and that Victoria was no longer welcome in their lives. She threatened to report Victoria to the authorities if she continued any contact with Marcus. Victoria's response was cold and calculated, suggesting that Carmen was simply jealous of their connection and that Marcus would never forgive her for interfering. That evening, Victoria called Marcus repeatedly, trying to convince him that his mother was overreacting and that they could continue their relationship in secret. She used every manipulation tactic she had developed over months, including threats of suicide and claims that ending their relationship would destroy her completely. Marcus, with his mother's support, finally found the strength to block her number and refuse all contact. Victoria's response to this rejection was immediate and disturbing. She began calling Carmen's workplace, claiming that Carmen was an unfit mother who was preventing her son from receiving important mentorship. She contacted Marcus's college counselor with false concerns about his emotional stability. She even called some of their mutual friends, spreading lies about Carmen's parenting and suggesting that the family was in crisis. When these indirect attacks failed to restore her access to Marcus, Victoria's behavior escalated dramatically. She began driving past their apartment building at all hours, leaving expensive gifts on their doorstep, and sending lengthy emails professing her love for Marcus and begging him to reconsider their relationship. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Victoria's obsession reached a dangerous climax. Unable to accept that Marcus had chosen his mother and his own well-being over continuing their relationship, Victoria began planning something far more serious than harassment or emotional manipulation. On a Thursday evening in November, Victoria purchased several items from different stores around Brooklyn: zip ties, duct tape, a baseball bat, and cleaning supplies. Security cameras captured her making these purchases with cash, her behavior appearing calm and methodical. She was planning to force a final confrontation that would either restore her control over Marcus or eliminate the people she blamed for taking him away from her. Victoria's plan was to break into Carmen and Marcus's apartment when Carmen returned from her night shift at the hospital. She intended to restrain Carmen and force Marcus to choose between resuming their relationship or watching his mother suffer serious harm. In her distorted thinking, Victoria believed that if she could isolate Marcus from his mother's influence, she could restore their previous dynamic. On Friday morning, Victoria parked outside the apartment building and waited for Carmen to leave for work. She had studied their routines carefully during months of friendship, so she knew exactly when the apartment would be empty, except for Marcus. Her plan was to enter the building using the spare key Carmen had given her months earlier when she was a trusted friend. However, Marcus had changed his schedule that day to attend a college orientation session he had forgotten about. When Victoria used her key to enter the apartment, expecting to find Marcus alone, she discovered that neither Carmen nor Marcus was home. Frustrated but not deterred, she decided to wait for one of them to return. Victoria spent several hours in the apartment, going through personal belongings and becoming increasingly agitated about the evidence of their life without her. She found college brochures for schools far from New York, suggesting that Marcus was planning to leave the area. She also discovered that Carmen had been researching legal options for dealing with their situation. When Carmen returned home from her shift at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. The apartment felt different, and several small items were out of place. As she moved through the rooms checking for signs of a break-in, Victoria emerged from the bedroom closet where she had been hiding, wielding the baseball bat she had purchased. What followed was a terrifying confrontation, where Victoria demanded to know where Marcus was and insisted that Carmen call him home immediately. Carmen realized that Victoria was far more unstable than anyone had suspected and that her life was in serious danger. She tried to reason with Victoria while slowly moving toward her phone to call for help. The situation escalated when Carmen refused to contact Marcus and instead tried to call 911. Victoria struck Carmen with the bat, causing a head injury that left her temporarily disoriented and bleeding. Victoria then used the zip ties to restrain Carmen to a chair, planning to wait for Marcus to return home so she could force the confrontation she had been planning. Fortunately, Marcus decided to surprise his mother by coming home early with dinner from her favorite restaurant. When he entered the apartment and saw the scene, he immediately called 911 while trying to help his mother. Victoria attempted to convince Marcus that she had only hurt Carmen to protect their relationship, but Marcus finally saw Victoria's actions for what they truly were: the behavior of someone whose obsession had become completely detached from reality. Police arrived within minutes of Marcus's emergency call and found Victoria still in the apartment, attempting to convince Marcus to leave with her. Detective Rodriguez, who responded to the scene, later said that Victoria seemed genuinely surprised that Marcus was horrified by what she had done to his mother. Her complete disconnect from the reality of her actions demonstrated how dangerous her obsession had become. Carmen was rushed to Brooklyn Methodist Hospital, the same facility where she worked, with a concussion and several stitches required for her head wound. Her colleagues were shocked to learn about the situation, as Victoria had seemed like such a caring friend during her occasional visits to the hospital. Carmen's injuries healed completely within several weeks, but the emotional trauma took much longer to process. Victoria was arrested and charged with breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted kidnapping. During the investigation, Police discovered the extent of her planning, including detailed notes about Carmen and Marcus's schedules and research she had conducted about how to force someone to comply with demands. The evidence made it clear that this was not a spontaneous act, but a carefully planned attack. The legal proceedings revealed that Victoria had a history of inappropriate relationships with younger men, though none had been reported to authorities previously. Her ex-husband came forward during the investigation to share that their marriage had ended because of her controlling behavior and obsession with maintaining power over others. This pattern helped prosecutors build a strong case against her. Marcus testified during the trial about the manipulation and grooming he had experienced, helping the jury understand how Victoria had systematically exploited their family's trust. His courage in speaking publicly about what had happened helped other young people recognize similar warning signs in their own lives. The case received significant media attention in New York, raising awareness about predatory behavior that targets vulnerable families. Victoria was sentenced to 8 years in prison and required to attend psychological counseling. She was also issued a permanent restraining order preventing any contact with Carmen or Marcus. During sentencing, she continued to insist that her relationship with Marcus had been genuine love, demonstrating her ongoing inability to understand the harm she had caused. Carmen and Marcus moved to a different neighborhood in Brooklyn, wanting a fresh start away from the memories of Victoria's manipulation. Carmen changed her work schedule to spend more time at home during Marcus's remaining months before college. Marcus decided to attend a university in Pennsylvania, giving him the distance he needed to heal and develop independence in a healthy environment. The experience taught both Carmen and Marcus valuable lessons about recognizing manipulation and trusting their instincts when something feels wrong. Carmen learned to question situations where adults show excessive interest in her son, while Marcus gained the ability to identify when someone is using emotional manipulation to control his decisions. Their relationship, as mother and son, became stronger through the process of healing together. Marcus learned that asking for help when feeling trapped or manipulated is a sign of strength, not weakness. Carmen realized the importance of maintaining open communication with her son, even during busy periods when work demands seem overwhelming. If this case has shown you anything, remember that predators often target families where parents are overwhelmed and children crave additional attention. Trust your instincts when adult relationships with teenagers seem inappropriate. Maintain open communication with young people in your life, and never hesitate to seek help when someone's behavior makes you uncomfortable. True friendship never requires secrecy, manipulation, or isolation from family and peers. What warning signs have you noticed in your own life that might deserve a second look? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to subscribe for more true crime cases that offer important lessons for protecting ourselves and our loved ones.